He was born so poor, his family sometimes had no food. He never went to university. He had no degree, no connections, no money. Scientists laughed at him. The elite ignored him. Yet when he died, every light bulb, every motor, every generator on Earth existed because of him. Without this one man, the modern world does not exist. Michael Faraday, the poorest boy who powered the world. Some men are born into greatness. Others are forged by fire. Michael Faraday had no fire to begin with. Just poverty, just hunger, and just one dream. Yet he became the greatest experimental scientist who ever lived. Welcome to ChronosX Secrets. This is the complete story of Michael Faraday. Chapter 1. Born into Poverty. September 22nd, 1791. Newington, Surrey, England. A baby boy was born. His name was Michael Faraday. His father was James Faraday, a blacksmith, a man who worked with his hands every single day. But James was often too sick to work, and when he could not work, there was no money. And when there was no money, there was no food. Some weeks, the family had almost nothing to eat. Michael received very little formal education. The family could not afford it. He learned to read, he learned to write, and that was essentially all the schooling he ever received. A brilliant mind trapped in poverty with no visible way out. But something was deeply different about Michael Faraday from the very beginning. He was endlessly and passionately curious about everything around him. How does fire burn? Why does lightning strike? What makes things move? These questions never left his restless young mind, not even for a single day. Chapter 2. The Bookshop Boy. At the age of 13, Michael Faraday left school forever. Not by choice, by necessity. He became a delivery boy for a local bookshop in London, running errands, delivering newspapers, earning a few pennies a day. Then, at 14 years old, he became an apprentice bookbinder, learning the trade of binding and repairing books. His employer was a kind man named George Rebow, and Rebow gave Michael something extraordinary. He allowed Michael to read the books he was binding, and Michael read everything. Science, chemistry, electricity, natural philosophy. He devoured every book he could find. But one book changed his life forever. A book called Conversations on Chemistry by Jane Marcet. A simple introduction to the science of chemistry. Michael read it over and over again. He could not put it down. He began doing his own tiny experiments with basic equipment, with almost no money in his spare room at night. A poor bookbinder teaching himself science, alone, in the dark, with almost nothing. But his hunger to learn was absolutely unstoppable. He began attending free public science lectures in London, sitting in the back, taking meticulous notes. He wrote down every single word, every diagram, every formula in beautiful, careful handwriting. And then he bound his own lecture notes into a handmade book, just as he had been trained to do. That handmade book would change everything. Chapter 3. The Letter That Changed History. 1812. London, the Royal Institution. The most prestigious scientific organization in all of Britain. The greatest scientist in England worked there. Sir Humphrey Davy, a legend of chemistry, a man worshipped by the scientific world. Michael attended 4 of Davy's lectures, sitting in the cheap seats, writing down every single word. He was overwhelmed, inspired, and completely on fire with excitement. And then he did something incredibly bold. He sent Sir Humphrey Davy a letter. Along with the letter, he included his handmade book, 300 pages of his own carefully written and bound notes from Davy's lectures. And in the letter, he asked for a job at the Royal Institution. He was 20 years old, a bookbinder, with no degree, no qualifications, and no scientific reputation of any kind. Davy was completely astonished by the quality of the notes. He replied to Michael immediately. He said the notes showed extraordinary dedication and intelligence, but unfortunately he had no position available at that time. Michael was devastated, but he did not quit. He went back to his bookbinding, and he waited. And then a miracle happened. Sir Humphrey Davy injured his eyes in a serious chemical explosion in his laboratory. He needed someone to help him write his scientific notes while he recovered, and he remembered Michael Faraday. In February of 1813, Michael Faraday was hired at the Royal Institution as a scientific assistant. He was 21 years old, and his real life had finally begun. Chapter 4. The Student Who Became the Master. From the very first day, Michael Faraday threw himself into every task with extraordinary intensity. He cleaned equipment, he prepared experiments, he organized the laboratory, and he watched every experiment Davy performed with burning curiosity. He asked questions constantly, and he learned with breathtaking speed. In 1813, Davy took Michael on an 18-month tour of Europe, visiting the greatest scientific minds on the continent. Michael met the giants of European science, men like André-Marie Ampère in France, Alessandro Volta in Italy. He absorbed everything around him like a sponge. But the journey was not without pain. Davy's wife treated Michael not as a scientist, but as a common servant. He was humiliated. He was looked down upon. He endured it in silence, with dignity and without bitterness. In 1815, he returned to London, more determined than ever before. He began his own independent research, working long hours every single day. And slowly, the student was becoming the master. In 1821, Michael Faraday made his first truly great discovery, electromagnetic rotation. He proved for the very first time in history that electricity could create physical motion. This was the birth of the electric motor. The world had absolutely no idea what was coming. Chapter 5. The Greatest Discovery in History. 1831. The Royal Institution, London. Michael Faraday was 40 years old, and he had been working obsessively on one single question for years. If electricity can create magnetism, can magnetism create electricity? Every scientist he spoke to said, no. Impossible. It cannot be done. Michael kept working, day after day, month after month, year after year. October 17th, 1831. He wound 2 separate coils of wire around an iron ring. He connected one coil to a battery, and he watched the other coil that was connected to nothing but a measuring instrument. The needle moved. Just for a moment, just the tiniest flicker, but it moved. Michael's hands were shaking. In that single extraordinary moment, he had discovered electromagnetic induction, the ability to generate electricity from moving magnetic fields. This was the discovery that powers the entire modern world. Every power station on Earth, every generator, every transformer, every electric motor, every dynamo, all of it born in that single moment, in a small laboratory in London, by a man who started his life as a bookbinder's assistant. The world would never be the same again. Chapter 6. The Man Behind the Science. Michael Faraday was not just a scientist, he was a deeply remarkable human being. In 1821, he married Sarah Barnard, a gentle and devoted woman who supported him completely throughout his entire life. Michael said Sarah was the anchor of his life. He was also a deeply religious man. His faith gave him extraordinary humility and an unshakable sense of purpose. And here is something remarkable. He refused a knighthood, not once, but twice. He refused to become Sir Michael Faraday. He wanted to remain simply Michael Faraday. He also refused the presidency of the Royal Society, the highest scientific honor in Britain. He said he preferred to remain plain Mr. Faraday until the end. A man of extraordinary achievement and extraordinary humility. Chapter 7. More discoveries that changed everything. Electromagnetic induction was just the beginning. He discovered the fundamental laws of electrolysis, the process by which electrical current causes chemical reactions. He discovered the Faraday effect, proving that light and magnetism are fundamentally connected, a discovery that would eventually lead to Einstein's theory of relativity. He invented the revolutionary concept of the electric and magnetic field. Before Faraday, nobody had ever thought about forces in this way. He invented the Faraday cage, used today in everything from microwave ovens to MRI machines. He also discovered benzene, one of the most important chemical compounds in the entire history of chemistry. Discovery after discovery, year after year, decade after decade, a man with absolutely no university degree reshaping the entire foundation of human scientific knowledge. Chapter 8. The Question from Gladstone. One day, the British politician William Gladstone visited Michael Faraday in his laboratory. He watched Faraday demonstrate his electromagnetic experiments with growing impatience. And then Gladstone asked one dismissive question. "But Mr. Faraday, what is the use of it?" Faraday smiled, and he replied with complete calm, "One day, sir, you will be able to tax it." The politician laughed. He did not understand what he was looking at. He was looking at the future of the entire world. Today, electricity is taxed in every country on Earth, just as Faraday predicted. Faraday was right, as always. Chapter 9. The mind begins to fade. By the 1840s, something was deeply wrong. Michael Faraday began suffering serious and frightening memory problems. He forgot names. He forgot details of experiments he had performed many times before. He forgot conversations he had just had. The brilliant mind that had powered so many extraordinary discoveries was slowly and heartbreakingly slipping away. Doctors could not fully explain what was happening to him. Many believed it was the result of decades of exposure to chemicals in his laboratory. He was forced to slow down, to reduce his experiments, to rest. But he never fully gave up. Even as his health declined, his spirit remained unbroken. He mentored a young physicist named James Clerk Maxwell, encouraging him to develop his own electromagnetic ideas. Maxwell would later complete mathematically what Faraday had discovered experimentally. Together, their work would transform the world. Chapter 10. The Final Years. Queen Victoria herself personally offered Michael Faraday a knighthood. He refused, again. The Queen then offered him a beautiful home as a gift from the crown. This time, he accepted, gratefully. He moved there with his beloved Sarah in 1858. He lived quietly, simply, peacefully, walking in the gardens, reading, praying. His memory was fading rapidly now. The great scientist was growing old, but he was completely at peace. He once said, "I shall be with Christ, and that is enough." August 25th, 1867, Hampton Court, England. Michael Faraday passed away, sitting quietly in his chair. He was 75 years old. The man who powered the world left it in perfect silence. Born in poverty, died in peace. No degree, no title, no inheritance. Just curiosity, just persistence, and just genius. He discovered electromagnetic induction. He invented the concept of the electric motor. He discovered the laws of electrolysis. He invented the field theory of physics. And he made modern civilization possible. Albert Einstein kept only 3 portraits on the wall of his study: Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, and Michael Faraday. The greatest minds in all of human history honored him as their inspiration. A boy who could not afford to go to school became the man who electrified the entire world. His own words say it best. "The more I study nature, the more I stand amazed at the work of the Creator." Michael Faraday, without equal, forever. Thank you for watching ChronosX Secrets. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the secrets of the past are closer than you think. We'll see you in the next one.